Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Growing up in the quiet embrace of our village, life moved in harmony with the seasons and the slow arc of the sun. As a child, I'd wake to the rhythmic chorus of cicadas in the summer and the distant crow of a rooster at dawn. The community was a tapestry of shared histories, where stories drifted from one household to the next, mingling like the sweet scent of honeysuckle on a warm breeze. The land itself carried memories, etched into the cracks of weathered wood, whispered through the swaying pines. Every home was a witness to generations of love, loss, and resilience. The elders often spoke of simpler times, when the Henderson farm stood as the pride of the county. I remember Mr. Henderson well, a tall, wiry man, his skin permanently bronzed by the sun, his hat as worn as the fields he tended. His farm stretched wide, its once bright white house now faded to a weary gray. He kept livestock in the barn, grew enough crops to sustain his family and make a fair profit at the market. But time is relentless. It wore him down, and when his daughters left in search of lives untouched by small-town expectations, he found himself alone, burdened by land too vast for his aging hands. The day he decided to sell sent ripples through the town, though few spoke of it openly. Some whispered that he was stubborn, moving south just to spite his daughters, who feared he'd chip away at their future inheritance. The thought amused me. Henderson, a quiet act of rebellion, selling his own land to live on his own terms. My aunt, never one to miss an opportunity for judgment, scoffed at his daughters, calling them too proud, too detached from the life that had raised them. That was the Southern way, skepticism toward those who turned their backs on their roots. So when word spread that the farm had new owners, curiosity mixed with unease. The talk was that they were Yankees, a term laced with both suspicion and reluctant intrigue. What was certain was that they had money, enough to buy 212 acres of fading legacy. Who they were and what they intended remained a mystery, the kind that had neighbors leaning over fences, swapping theories in hushed tones. I met her by chance. Her Cadillac sat stranded by the roadside, steam curling from the hood. As any good neighbor would, I stopped. She was inside, panic written on her face. She refused to roll down the window, just stared at me, frozen in place. Rain fell steadily, the air turning sharp with cold. I hesitated, then drove up Henderson Hill where the cell signal was strong enough to call the sheriff. "Why didn't you help her?" Wendell asked when I reached him. "I tried, but she wouldn't open the door," I replied. "Then go back and do something," he insisted. "Fine. Let me grab my slicker. It's cold, dark, and she's terrified," I muttered. "While you're at it, bring some barbecue to the station," Wendell added. "There are buns and salad too. Got any baked beans? I'll be there in 10. Does the cake have frosting?" I asked, half smiling despite the situation. 20 minutes later, Wendell and I pulled up beside her car. She was crying. Wendell approached first, identifying himself. Finally, she rolled down the window. "Do you need help, ma'am?" he asked gently. "Yes, please," she said, her voice trembling. Smoke started coming out, and I couldn't reach anyone. "Will found you earlier. Let him check the hood," Wendell assured her. I leaned in, taking a quick look. "You need a new radiator hose," I said. "Call AAA, Wendell suggested. "Billy's out of town for a wedding, so they won't be able to fix it until Tuesday." Her expression darkened with worry. "I can't leave it here. My husband would be furious," she said, anxiety creeping into her voice. Wendell turned to me. "Will, take your trailer and haul it for her." It was late, cold, and still raining, but I nodded. "I'll park it at my lot, behind the fence. It'll be safe." Relief softened her features. "Thank you. I'll pay whatever you charge," she said, introducing herself as Mrs. Hatfield. Wendell left to handle another wreck on Route 12, and I drove her home. She sat in silence, distant, lost in thought. As we neared the Henderson place, the house stood in darkness. "Why aren't the lights on?" I asked. "The power's out. Didn't you notice how dark it is?" she replied. Do you have a flashlight? No, she admitted. You'll need one out here. Henderson had a generator. You should check if it's still wired to the power grid. She was lucky. The generator still stood, coughing out a weak hum. A diesel unit, large enough to last about 4 hours. If it holds, you'll be fine until the power comes back. They usually don't cut it for long this time of year. I'd suggest adjusting it and keeping a barrel of diesel as backup, I said. She nodded, making a note. I'll go get your car. Here's my card with the address of the lot. If you need anything before your husband returns, don't hesitate to call. Good night, Mrs. Hatfield, I added. She looked up, her gratitude evident. I can't thank you enough. It's no problem. Good night. I watched for a moment, making sure she was safe before heading out. Then I called Sherry, knowing she'd be worried. Where have you been? Why didn't you call? I missed you, she said the moment she answered. Sorry, got a call from the police. Billy's away, and they needed help moving a car. I'll be home in an hour and a half, I explained. Make sure they appreciate you working in this weather, she muttered. I will. Money was always on her mind lately. Despite her parents' wealth, despite us doing just fine, she'd started acting this way about a year ago. I never understood why. I towed the car, locked it safely at my lot, and drove home, just as promised. Sherry had already gone to bed, leaving a note about dinner in the microwave. After eating and taking a quick shower, I collapsed into sleep until morning. The sun was out, erasing any memory of the cold rain from the night before. With little to do at the store, I picked up a new hose, unloaded the car, and made the necessary repairs. Around lunchtime, a well-dressed man walked in, looking concerned. I'm Ben Hatfield. I need to arrange for my wife's car to be towed. Can you recommend a mechanic? He asked my assistant, Charlie. Our business specialized in renting heavy equipment, and the recent economic downturn had actually benefited us. More people were taking on projects themselves instead of hiring contractors. Charlie gestured toward me, and Ben walked over, extending his hand. I'm Will McCoy, I said, smirking as Mira, our costume handler, giggled behind us. Sorry, Mr. Hatfield, Mira said, trying to stifle her laughter. We're not laughing at you, just the whole Hatfield and McCoy thing. Ben chuckled in understanding. Well, I hope we're not feuding, he joked. I left my tool in Philadelphia. Mine's a plowshare now, I replied. What do you need? I'm looking for a mechanic. No worries, I assured him. I fixed it this morning. It just needed a new hose and some antifreeze. Your wife can pick it up before 6. Ben looked surprised. How much do I owe you? $40. The receipt's in the glove box. That doesn't seem right. It is, I said simply. I don't charge for labor. We're neighbors. His expression showed hesitation, so I elaborated. You live on Henderson Road. I'm on Howell. Neighbors help each other out for free. If you rented equipment, I'd charge. If I needed legal advice, I'd pay. But small favors? They're just that small. Makes sense. Ben nodded slowly. It'll take some getting used to, but thank you, he said. About 45 minutes later, he returned, this time with his wife. She was more attractive and younger than I expected. Probably in her 40s, but looking closer to 30. Luxury living clearly agreed with her. Ben left her at the shop, likely caught up with work, and she turned to me with repeated thanks. That's enough, Mrs. Hatfield, I said, cutting her off gently. It's really no big deal. Call me Angie. It's a big deal where I'm from, she insisted with a smile. She shook hands with Mira and Charlie, who were both visibly intrigued by her presence. Instead of leaving, Angie asked for a tour, showing particular interest in the party supplies, especially the castle, a massive turreted circus tent I had bought at an auction. It was perfect for weddings, capable of transforming a plain field into a fairy tale setting overnight. Meanwhile, Sherry had become restless again. She wanted a new Cadillac, just like the one Angie had. Suddenly, her 2-year-old Chevy Impala wasn't good enough anymore. If we buy the Cadillac, we won't be able to trade it in for 4 years, I reminded her. pointing out the very thing she had dismissed when we first bought the Impala. "It's practically worn out," she complained. "It only has 39,000 miles on it," I countered. "I need a new car." "Why are we arguing about this?" she pressed. "Because you don't need one. You just want one. We can't keep trying to match what our neighbors have. Angie's husband is a lawyer. Your car is perfectly fine. If you really want a new one, buy it yourself. But my name won't be on the paperwork." I knew she couldn't do that. Her credit was a mess. Before we got married, she had defaulted on a car loan and racked up credit card debt. I helped with the car loan but refused to cover her credit card bills. I didn't trust credit cards, they were financial traps. "But you have 2 credit cards," she pointed out. "They're for business," I explained. "The Amex is for occasional use, and the other one I use twice a year just to keep it active, mainly for equipment deals." I had made Sherry sign a prenup, keeping my house and business separate. My parents owned the house but had moved to California, leaving it to me, though the transfer wasn't formalized. Sherry assumed it was, and I never corrected her. The paperwork was ready just in case. I built my business from the ground up. After years of subcontracting and getting tired of driving 45 miles for equipment, I used my savings, borrowed from my parents, and invested everything back into the company. By year 4, I had repaid them in full. When I met Sherry, I was proud of what I had built and determined to protect it. We met at a Christmas party hosted by a contractor I worked with. Normally, I avoided those events, but that night boredom won out. The room was filled with well-dressed, beautiful women. I danced, flirted, and enjoyed myself. Sherry was there with someone else, but we shared a dance. There was a spark. I didn't pursue it. She wasn't alone. But as I was leaving, the hostess slipped me a note. "Call her," she whispered before walking away. It was Sherry's number, but the holiday rush kept me busy, and I set it aside. A week later, Sherry came into my store. She spoke with Mira and then pointed at me. "I'm here to pick up my rental," she said, handing me the form. Male. Good-looking chaperone for a Christmas party. 5-hour duties. Good conversationalist, dancer, and kisser. Unable to dial phone numbers. Optional delivery. I was stunned. She was striking about 5 feet 8 inches with a perfect figure. "I'll personally handle this rental. Guaranteed," I said, shaking her hand. "It's a deal, but I expect satisfaction," she teased with a laugh. We grabbed coffee to go over the details. Mira insisted I needed a new suit and dragged me to the mall, her husband laughing at the spectacle. I tried on 8 suits before she found the one. The shirt, tie, socks, and even shoes took another 40 minutes. "You're not picking out my underwear too, are you?" I joked. "Dark blue silk boxers." "Done," she replied without missing a beat. "Remind me to fire you. Only if it comes with costume modeling," she shot back. I sighed in resignation. "Let's go home. Only if you promise to cut your hair tomorrow," she teased. Dressed to the nines, I rented a Cadillac Escalade for the weekend. When I picked up Sherry, she was breathtaking. Wrapped in a shimmering green dress with a high slit and a plunging neckline, held in place by sheer confidence and double-sided tape. She was both bold and elegant. Helping her into the car, I caught a glimpse of her garters. We must have talked during the drive, but I don't remember a word of it. At the party, she stole the spotlight, constantly being asked to dance. During a slow song, one partner got too close. She grabbed my hand, pulling me away. "No more slow dances with anyone but you," she whispered. On the drive home, she nestled close, playfully nibbling my ear at stoplights. We kissed passionately until impatient honking forced us to part. Before leaving her house, we ended up steaming the car windows. After about 20 minutes, she invited me inside for coffee. I lounged on the couch as she changed, but when she emerged, her outfit, or lack thereof, left me speechless. She noticed my silence and shifted nervously. "Listen, I really like you," she admitted. "Normally, I take things slow, dates, romantic build-up, candles, maybe chocolate, but I don't want to wait. Let's skip the months and see how well this mattress holds up." 12 hours later, I stepped out briefly for breakfast, but for the next 2 days, My Escalade remained parked outside her house. 2 months after that night, we moved in together. 5 months later, we were married, agreeing to wait a few years before starting a family. She was 25, and I was 29. After 3 years, I started dropping hints about having kids. But something shifted about a year ago. Sherry became more demanding, more materialistic. She wanted a bigger house, despite our spacious 4-bedroom home being more than enough. Then I discovered she had secretly opened a credit card and maxed it out. When I paid it off and revoked her access to our finances, she refused to speak to me for days. Despite earning a decent income, she was always broke. I covered all household expenses, leaving only the groceries to her, as we had agreed. Yet her closet overflowed with unworn clothes and shoes. The silence after the credit card incident lasted 5 days. On the 6th, I was cleaning out her closet when she arrived home. She stood there, stunned, watching me. "I'm not living like this anymore," I told her firmly. "If I'm going to be alone, I might as well live alone." Her eyes widened. Before she could argue, I continued. "I called your mother. She's agreed to let you stay with her for 2 weeks. By then, we'll find you a place. I'll cover the deposit, 2 months' rent, and set up the utilities. This is your chance to learn budgeting and living independently." Sherry's face went pale, and before I could react, she fainted. I caught her, cooled her down with a damp cloth, and waited for her to regain consciousness. When she finally came to, she looked dazed. "I had the weirdest dream," she murmured. "You were kicking me out." Then she saw the suitcases and the neatly folded clothes on the bed. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please don't make me leave," she sobbed. "I'll do better." Once she had calmed down, I led her to the kitchen. She sat across from me, avoiding eye contact. "I'm serious, Sherry," I said. "I can't keep living like this." Tantrums, reckless spending, avoiding conversations about starting a family. It feels like I don't even know you anymore. If you want to leave, say so. If not, things have to change. After a long silence, she finally admitted her deepest fear. "I'm terrified of motherhood," she confessed. "I grew up feeling invisible, one of 3 kids, close in age, always overlooked. When my parents divorced, my mom struggled alone. She started drinking, my dad moved across the country, and we were left to fend for ourselves. I don't want to put a child through that." I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm sorry for what you went through," I said, "but I'm only talking about having 1 child for now. If we decide on another, we'll wait at least 2 years. And I promise, I'll never leave you." We avoided serious conversations for weeks, but eventually, things returned to normal. Sherry started cutting back on her spending and even opened a savings account. 3 months later, she showed me her balance, and I was genuinely impressed. "Don't get too proud," she teased. "It won't last long." I assumed she was planning to buy a new car. Instead, she surprised me. "I'm using it for nursery furniture," she said. "I want you to paint it light blue." I stared at her, stunned. "What did you just say?" She smiled warmly. "We're having a son. 7 months from now." I had never cried in front of her before, but in that moment, I couldn't hold back. She looked startled. "Did I do something wrong? Isn't this what you wanted?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Before she could say another word, I pulled her into my arms, covering her in kisses. We laughed and cried together. The moment we stepped outside, Mira, our nosy but lovable neighbor, immediately picked up on the shift in energy. "What's going on? You two look like you just heard great news." I grinned. "Mira, we're having a baby boy in 7 months. But keep it quiet. We want to surprise my mom." She smirked, already pulling out her phone. "Sure." I turned to Sherry. "Did you tell your mom yet?" Sherry's smile widened. "I checked before I came in. The whole town will know by tonight." By the end of the day, people stopped us on the street, hugging Sherry and shaking my hand. When we returned to the store, a huge banner stretched across the front. "Congratulations to Will and Sherry. It's a boy." Mira stood nearby, looking smug. Like I could keep that secret. The pregnancy was tough. At 7 months, Sherry was put on bed rest, and I knew then we wouldn't try for another child. It was too risky. Her mother moved in to help, the only one who could handle Sherry's moods. Labor lasted 17 hours before an emergency C-section. As the exhaustion set in, Sherry whispered, "Never again." I nodded in agreement. While she was still in the hospital, she had her tubes tied. Our son, William Bryan Sanford, was born nearly 9 pounds, explaining her pain. He had thick black hair like mine, and despite what the nurse said, it never fell out. Becoming a parent was indescribable, beautiful, terrifying, all-consuming. Spontaneity became a thing of the past. Even a simple grocery trip required planning. Sherry struggled more with motherhood than I expected. She loved Billy but would always hand him to me the moment I got home, calling it her baby recovery time. I didn't mind. I cherished every moment, whispering about our future. Little League, camping, Boy Scouts. He'd smile and hum, fascinated by my face. Sherry, however, was frustrated that he calmed down instantly with me. I took 2 weeks off after Billy was born. When I returned to work, Mira and Charlie had put up a new sign, Sanford and Son Equipment Rentals. No junk. It brought tears to my eyes. Over time, my friendship with the Hatfields grew. One afternoon, Angie stopped by, looking to rent a tractor for her garden. "Sorry, no can do," I said. She frowned. "Why not? Tractors can be dangerous if you don't know how to use them," I explained. "Besides, you already have one in your shed. It won't start. Probably just the battery. I'll stop by tomorrow and take a look." The next day, Sherry, Billy, and I visited the Hatfields. While I worked on the tractor, Angie held Billy for an hour, completely mesmerized. Bennett, her husband, watched from a distance. "Do you really want her using that thing?" he asked, concerned. "No," I admitted, "but she's determined. I'll make sure she learns how to use it safely." Later, Angie and Sherry brought out lunch. After we ate, I walked Angie through the tractor's basics, the brakes, throttle, hydraulics, and gears. "Keep in mind," I warned, "tractor gears don't stall like a car's. Once you release the clutch, it moves. If you're in high gear on a slope, it could flip. That's why the collapsible roll bar and seatbelt matter. Stay inside the bar, and even if something goes wrong, you'll be safe." I had Angie put the tractor in low gear and guided her as she drove across the field. It moved at such a slow pace that I could walk beside her, giving instructions along the way. I showed her how to operate the hydraulic hitch and set up the rotary plow. "Always start with the equipment attached to prevent flipping on steep slopes. It's much safer that way," I advised. She made a few passes with a wide grin while Ben snapped pictures. Her excitement was palpable, but it quickly turned to disappointment when I parked the tractor and took the key. "The battery's dead," I explained. "A friend of mine is installing a crossbar and seatbelts on Tuesday. You'll get a new battery and keys then, but don't use it alone until Ben is home." Sherry, meanwhile, was admiring Angie's beautiful house and expensive artwork. Angie had returned to work, a job she genuinely enjoyed, which kept her from going stir-crazy at home. Teaching her how to use the tractor had been a fun experience. She planted her own garden, bought a small cultivator, and was overcome with emotion when she harvested her first batch of beans. "I warned you the garden might be too much," I reminded her, amused. She laughed. "Ben works long hours. I don't like watching TV, and I need content for my blog." Her blog, Gone Country, documented her transition to rural living. It was funny, widely followed, and often featured photos and videos of me as her so-called rural advisor. Wanting an organic garden, Angie asked for my help, so I introduced her to a friend who could supply horse manure. The catch? She had to clean the stalls to get it. She embraced the challenge, even sharing pictures online of her self-proclaimed crap uniform. Sherry's visits to the Hatfields became less frequent, but I still heard all about gardening and organic methods. Each time I visited, I brought Billy along, and Angie spent as much time with him as she did tending to her plants. One day, I casually asked if she wanted kids. "Yes," she admitted, "but Ben is infertile due to a childhood condition." We considered adoption, but he wasn't comfortable with it. She sighed. He's my soulmate, so I dropped it. But sometimes when I hold Billy, I think about it, until he needs a diaper change. She added with a laugh, handing him back. Later, Ben joined us. I need your help planning a business barbecue, he announced. You and Sherry will cook and you'll be paid. This is business, not just friendship. Agreed, I said, relieved they were taking it seriously. Angie took charge of the planning, coordinating supplies, and logistics. How many people? I asked. We've got 80 confirmed, but let's plan for 100, no kids. I frowned. That's sending the wrong message. This is the South. Family is everything. Invite spouses and kids. It'll add a personal touch. Call to confirm attendees and plan activities for the kids. Angie immediately called Ben. Hold off on sending the invitations, she told him. We need names and contacts for the wives. I'll explain later. Then she looked at me, amused. Ever think about running for office? You'd win with the barbecue vote. I laughed. Nah, just a lot of party experience. Her calls worked. Attendance nearly tripled from 100 to 300. We hired 3 local girls to help with service, while Sherry, Mira, and Charlie pitched in. It was a warm day with a light breeze, perfect for an outdoor event. I set up a large castle tent as a dining area, complete with fans to keep it cool. We served 400 pounds of pulled pork, 20 chickens, and 2 beef briskets for the Jewish guests, with clearly labeled side dishes to accommodate kosher diets. The spread included potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans, zucchini casserole, grilled vegetables from Angie's garden, and homemade cakes and brownies. For the kids, we had chilled watermelon. Exhausting? Absolutely, but worth it. Thanks to the kids being included, the final head count reached 420. Charlie managed parking with the help of local teenagers. Guests mingled for an hour before serving themselves, keeping the atmosphere casual. Alcohol was kept separate in a smaller tent and only opened an hour after the meal, with senior partners ensuring no excessive drinking. The kids played loudly, running around and enjoying the games. Angie and Ben were excellent hosts, moving through the crowd to make sure everyone was enjoying themselves. The men talked business, while the women gathered under shaded trees with comfortable seating. Sherry, looking elegant in a sundress and bun, received plenty of compliments on our food. By the end of the event, we had exchanged countless business cards. The senior partner gave a short speech, thanking everyone and recognizing Angie, Ben, Sherry, and me for our efforts. He wrapped up quickly and urged everyone to take home leftovers before enjoying ice cream, a suggestion that drew applause. The ice cream machines offered chocolate, banana, pineapple, blueberry, and vanilla. The kids, of course, devoured it eagerly, leading to more than a few ice cream headaches. Angie's garden also became a highlight, with many guests taking tours and receiving fresh produce. Her homegrown watermelons became the centerpiece of a seed-spitting contest. Then came the moment that stunned Sherry. Angie handed her the check. This turned into a full-scale corporate event, she explained. Ben didn't expect you to cover the costs. As if that wasn't enough, the senior partner surprised us with a 25% bonus and a handwritten thank you note. I split part of it with Charlie, Mira, and the helpers, then gave the rest to Sherry. She had earned it. Ben's law firm primarily handled business law, but after the barbecue, event planning requests started pouring in. The demand and profit was too high to ignore, so we registered it as a separate business. Sherry left her job to manage it, quickly excelling. Rentals came through us, so I promoted Mira to rental manager. She hired her recently laid-off husband, Donnie. She's the boss at home and at work, Donnie joked. I'll never make another decision again. I smirked. Just think. You're one of the few who gets to entertain their boss. Sherry began dressing more professionally and meeting clients in the evenings. Eventually, we bought her a Cadillac. Business boomed, especially in the winter. Saturdays were spent working events, planning, or meeting with clients. Sherry handled the meetings while I managed logistics and food. But as the party business outpaced our rental income, it also took a toll on us. Sherry frequently stayed out late for meetings. I asked her to cut back, but she insisted it was necessary. After 3 consecutive late Saturdays, I lost patience. I won't cook, coordinate, or help with any event that costs us time together. I thought we were partners. She snapped. I want a husband and wife partnership too. Decide what matters more, the business or us. Ignoring her grumbling, I went to comfort Billy, who had woken up from the noise. True to my word, I refused to help with the next event. It was a disaster. The clients hated the food and service, and Sherry's reputation took a hit. That Sunday, she approached me waving a white handkerchief. A truce. I shook my head. No truce, only full surrender. Meet my conditions or we're done. No negotiation. Thanks for listening. This story isn't over yet, and things are about to get even more intense. Stay tuned for the next part to see what happens next.